Hi, I'm David Abraham, and today I'm going to give you a demonstration of Logi Report. Logi Report is embedded reporting built for precision, performance, and scale. And today I'm going to show you how a team of developers use Logi Report to add operational reporting to this wine distribution application. As I go through my demonstration, I'm going to do my best to highlight what part of the page is the embedded report and where we're looking at the parent application, the wine distribution application. You can also see at the bottom of my screen 4 different icons. And these are for the key themes that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to use this as a rough agenda of today's demonstration. The first item is pixel perfect formatting. And to talk about that, I'm going to log in as Brian Williams, the VP of Sales, and take a look at the event management page. Now, from the event management page, Brian can plan events and take a look at information needed to do so. One of the capabilities of these events is being able to create private label wines. And we see this form where we can enter information like the wine title, the type of wine, and even a description of the wine, and use it to generate a label. When I click send, we pass that information into Logi Report, and we can see the label in this pixel perfect report that we have on the screen. Notice the precise position of every report object used to create this label. Things like the label, the title of the wine, the images used in the label, and also the barcode on the left-hand side, which is a functional barcode that can be scanned. Now, precision is also important when we're looking at regulatory entities that have very specific requirements for forms that they request. And this particular form is one that's needed whenever you're going to create a label for any alcoholic beverage. And our application knows information about the wine. It knows the name, it knows the alcohol percentage, the wine type, and we can use all this information and Logi Report's high precision to place all that information where needed on this page and fill out this report. We can also do that even with the label itself, which is included as an image as part of the form that now the user can print and submit to get this approved. So when you have requirements that demand high precision, Logi Report definitely has us covered. Now, Brian also likes to take a look at the quarterly sales report that gets sent to investors. And with Logi Report, we can really create any report layout imaginable. This, with a single template, I can create a report that looks great on the web and that can also be exported to PDF. Now, when we open the report, we can see here that the development team that created the report was able to match the corporate requirements for things like logos and fonts to create this report that goes out to investors. We also see repeating sections throughout the report. These are called bands, and we use them to really have ultimate control over that report layout, how everything is displayed on the page. Bands also let us create reports that are scalable. So as there's more data, in this case more sales, the template is still, the layout itself still looks great, but the report can scale up and down depending on how much data there is. Bands can be used to repeat throughout the report, and we use them to add things like tables, and within the table to generate things like subtotals. And we can also use them to add other objects like charts or other subreports for quite a lot of flexibility with how we create our layouts. We also need smart pagination to control the actual layout of our reports. And we see here in page 4 how we can actually switch from portrait to landscape for a particular page because this table needs extra width. Smart pagination also lets us control how much information is placed per page. So we know that when this table ends, we can add a page break because the next table is not going to have enough space. So Bandit reports and smart pagination really let us create this report that is polished enough to be able to send to investors. Let's go back and take a look at this shipment detail report. This is also using bands. As you can see here, the header, the charts, the table, and within the table, summary information and more detailed information. From here, Brian can also quickly export this report. This time we're going to export to Excel. And this highlights that reports which are sometimes printed and sent out can also be operational in nature. So in this case, we can see how this report, this Excel export, for one, looks just like the report that it was used to generate it. Exact same look and feel. But even though it looks just like it, it's also a fully interactive Excel document. If I click on the chart and go to my chart design, you'll see that I can quickly change where the labels or the legend of the chart are placed. Also, if I click on the summary level information for the cell, you can see that we can actually see the formula used to create this data. Now, it's great that Brian can do much more data crunching in Excel itself after exporting to Excel, but the report in the browser is also operational and can be used to get more information. So from here, Brian can do things like sort on the ID, or let's actually sort on date. We can also go in and filter this report down to only show, let's say, the northeastern USA. And if we click on the visualization on the top right, we can drill down into specific shipments that had issues. So you can see here how we can, from the report itself, have all these different ways to interact with our data in the embedded report. So today's demonstration so far has shown us 2 examples of pixel perfect formatting and 2 examples of bandit reports, one for printing and another one that is interactive and operational right in the browser or when we export. The next thing I want to highlight today is the no-code design environment that was used to create them and to also interact with them right in the browser. So in order to do that, let's log in as Trace, who's part of the sales ops team. And this really is going to highlight how different teams or different team members with different skill levels can get different levels of functionality in the reports that they interact with. So Trace is going to go into the shipment status report. And what you'll see in the shipment status report is that Trace can do quick changes of parameters used to create the report. Let's say if we wanted to look at an extra year, I'm going to open this up to look at up to 2017, I can add that filter. Something to highlight here, when I click submit, Logi report is actually going back to the database and running this report again and getting that extra data. So we are interacting with the live report. Now, that's a quick change that Trace made, and we've seen before how we can filter or sort the report. But Trace is an advanced user. He's part of the sales ops team. So he can actually toggle this report into edit mode. And from here, you can see one-click actions that let us quickly customize that report. So if we wanted to see this bar chart that is breaking down shipment by shipment type, but instead of having it horizontal, we want it vertically, that's a very quick change with a single click of a button. We also get reusable report components, things like what you see on the left-hand side, which is called the business view. A business view is essentially a metadata abstraction that sits on top of our data. And it has all the different tables, all the different fields, all the different aggregations and calculations that then the end user can use to interact with the report. Again, we are still going to the database whenever we make a change. But what's cool about this is that this is reusable and that Trace can quickly edit the report itself. So if we want to actually see the status of shipments, we can grab status and drop it into the report, and we now have that extra label in our table. So Trace, because he's an advanced user, can make these edits to the report. But at the very highest level of sophistication with what an end user can do is actually create a report from scratch. So Trace can click on this button and using the same business views that we were just talking about, quickly select the fields that we want in our report. So we add these fields, click OK, and there we have our table. Those one-click buttons that we were talking about before enable us to change the way we're visualizing this data. In this case, I'm going to pivot my data, and I can also quickly change the orientation of my pivot. So all these buttons give me speed and flexibility with what I can build. And if I want to add a brand new component, let's select a table and drag it into the right part of the report. And again, just add the fields that we want. So you can see here how by using all this interactivity, it can be very easy for someone like Trace to either create a report for himself or a report for others that he's working with as they request these custom reports being built. So the last thing I'm going to do with this report is give it a title. This is going to be our sales team performance. So there you go. In just a matter of a few seconds, maybe a minute or two, we went through, looked at quick edits of existing reports, and then finally creating a brand new report from scratch. So we've taken a look at different report styles. We've looked at the no-code design environment used to create or edit those reports. Now let's take a look at the architecture that has enabled the creation of this highly performant experience. So this diagram gives us a general overview of the flow. On the left-hand side, we have all the different data sources that we can work with to create our reports. You'll notice that the traditional relational sources are here. We also support flat files, web services, big data providers, and even custom data sources like RESTful endpoints or SOAP endpoints. Now, everything that I've looked at today has been against a single report server. But when we have high concurrency, we can actually horizontally scale this to have a cluster of Logi reports. And because this is used by software teams that are embedding these reports into their applications, we definitely support multi-tenancy and single sign-on. So we can have a single instance or a single cluster of Logi report running that is used by multiple tenants. We can apply logical filters so that there's never any chance of a tenant A getting access to tenant B's reports. And then of course, it's about what we can do with all these reports. So how can we deliver them and what's the kind of performance that we can expect when we're running or exporting these reports. And for that, we're going to log in one more time into our sales distribution application and take a look at embedding and distribution. So let's do so as Brian Williams. And the last type of report that we're going to look at is an invoice. So the first thing that I want to highlight is what can we do when it comes to the actual embedding of the report. And the embedding portion is everything that's under this line. And you see here that we have custom buttons, and these are part of the parent application that are interacting through API with the embedded report. So if I want to pass a filter, right now we're looking at absolutely all the invoices, but I can quickly filter our reports to just look at America or just look at EMEA. Now, that's interactivity between the parent application and the embedded content. The actual embedding is done through JavaScript, so there's no need for iframes. And we can control every single part of the report through these APIs. Things like filters, exporting, scheduling, all these things we can do through APIs. And then that brings us to the actual distribution of the reports. So this is an invoice. And of course, we want the recipient of the invoice to have it so that they can pay their bills. Now, a typical way of distributing a report like this is what we call bursting. We run the report once, and this single report has absolutely all the invoices, but then we want to cut those up into the individual invoices for the recipients. And what we can do here is actually go through that process and create that burst. And this is typically something that an administrator will do. And the end user simply schedules it, fires it off like I just did now, or it's set to automatically happen. So right now, all these reports or this burst fired off right now when I click that button. You can see that date. And if we look up the specific report, you see that's a single page. So we generated the report and then we cut it up into the recipients. And if we wanted to email them, we could. But in this case, we saved it in the directory so I can show you all the different examples. Now, what if Brian actually wants to physically send that invoice or schedule that report to go out? We also have our quick scheduling capability. So you see here how we can set how often we want that report to go out. So it can be daily or weekly, and we can choose, in this case, because it's an invoice, I want it in the inbox first thing in the morning. We can also choose how we want that to go out. So it can be an email. We can talk to a versioning system. So if for regulatory reasons we need to keep every single version of a report in our versioning system, we can. Or we can save it in a directory using FTP. We also have control over how the attachment is actually, what format the attachment is in. And you see here all the different export options. So we saw during today's demonstration the different kinds of export capabilities that we have. We just saw how we can actually schedule or burst these reports to go out in mass. But let's actually talk about raw performance. And in order to do so, I have this button here that switches my report from English to French. So I'm essentially going to have to recreate this report. And let's just take a look at how long it takes for this report to be generated. You'll see here that as I click next, I'm going to page 2, page 3, and then when I click to the very last page, it's actually taking a little bit longer for me to get there. So that highlights the fact that even though this report is 1,452 pages, as the first pages get generated, the end user can actually start seeing them and interacting with them. So even though we have great performance, we have even better perceived performance in the browser. Now, when I export this PDF, that trick doesn't help. So we also need to have just raw performance when the full report is generated. And to do so, I want to show you how fast we can export a 1,400 page report. And I'm going to click OK, and now the PDF is getting generated. So what you'll see is that in a matter of 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, we were able to build this report and send it through the pipes all the way to my browser. That's extremely good performance when you think of what's going on, of the precision that we have in the report, the different bands, everything being delivered in time. So again, just to summarize what we just talked about today, we saw the different kinds of report, the pixel perfect reports, the use of bands to create any report layout imaginable. We saw the no-code design environment used to either tweak an existing report or create one from scratch. And then we finally took a look at the actual architecture that enables us to do all this. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to visit our website. And if you actually want to have a trial, please contact us and I'd be happy to help you evaluate Logi Report. Thank you. Bye-bye.